She said the words, "I'm authorized to be here." Her voice shook the walls of my home, and before I could even answer, she was already inside, looking around like she owned the place. But what she didn't know was that I had already called someone she never expected, and when she saw them, standing in my yard, she froze, her face drained of color. And in that moment, the power she thought she had was gone. Welcome to HOA Chaos, the place where the wildest neighborhood stories come to life. My name is Mark. I live in a quiet suburban street in Texas. On the outside, our neighborhood looks perfect, but behind those trimmed lawns and smiling faces, there's drama, control, and secrets you wouldn't believe. And this is the story of how one HOA Karen thought she could control my life, until the day she stepped inside my house. And everything changed. She thought she owned my life. She thought she owned my house, but she didn't know. I was not the kind of man who bends easy. The story really began on a quiet Saturday morning, the kind where birds are singing, sprinklers click across the lawns, and everything looks so normal it feels fake. I was sitting on my porch with a cup of coffee. The sun was warm. The street was still. And I remember thinking, maybe today would be peaceful. But peace never lasts long when you live under an HOA. Our neighborhood was designed to look perfect. Every mailbox was the same size. Every lawn cut to the exact same length. Even the shutters on the windows had to be one of 3 approved colors. The board called it keeping the community's value high. But the truth was, it was control. Control dressed up as rules, and the loudest enforcer of those rules was her. Her real name doesn't matter, because everyone just called her Karen. She was the HOA president, self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac, always marching down the street with a clipboard, writing notes on people's houses. If a trash can stayed out past 9 a.m., fine. If a lawn grew 1 inch too high, fine. If your car wasn't shiny enough, fine. And she delivered those fines like candy on Halloween. At first, I ignored her. I thought, she's just annoying, not dangerous. But the letters kept coming. One for my trash can, one for the color of my curtains, one for the way I parked in my own driveway, and each one felt less like a rule reminder and more like a threat. Then came the last letter, the one that made me laugh out loud at first. It said, "If you do not comply, we will enter your property for inspection." I crumpled it up, tossed it in the trash. But maybe I should have paid more attention, because that Saturday morning, my door shook with the loudest knock I had ever heard. When I opened it, there she was, Karen, standing at my door with fire in her eyes. She pushed past me before I could even react, 1 foot inside my home, and she snapped, "I'm authorized to be here." Her voice cracked through my hallway like thunder. She didn't ask. She didn't wait. She just marched in. Her eyes darted across my living room like she was searching for hidden crimes. Her finger dragged across my furniture, like she was inspecting for dust. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't about rules anymore. This was about power. I told her to leave. I told her she was trespassing. But she smirked, that smug little smirk, like she had already won. "Rules are rules," she said, and then softer, almost to herself. "I'm authorized." Authorized by who? The HOA? The board of neighbors who were too scared to question her? Or just by her own inflated ego? As she marched deeper into my house, my anger boiled. It wasn't just the invasion. It was the arrogance, the way she looked at my things like they belonged to her, the way she spoke like she owned my walls, my floors, my air. I wanted to throw her out. I wanted to grab her arm and push her outside. But then I remembered, that's what she wanted. If I lost my temper, she'd call the cops. She'd twist the story, make me the villain. And in a neighborhood like mine, who would believe me? So instead, I played a different game. I smiled. I let her walk around. I let her dig her own grave, because while she thought she was in control, I had already made a call and help was on the way. But as she stormed through my house, my heart pounded. Every step she took felt like a violation. Every word she spoke felt like a slap, and the worst part was the way she enjoyed it. She wasn't here to protect the neighborhood. She was here to feel powerful, and in her mind, she was winning. But little did she know, The end of her little reign was closer than she ever imagined, because soon she would open my door again, and when she looked outside, she would see them, and everything about her face would change. Karen's shoes clicked on my hardwood floor. Every sound felt louder than it should, like her presence was poisoning the air inside my home. I leaned against the wall, pretending to stay calm, but inside, my blood was boiling. This was not just a neighbor anymore. This was an intruder. She walked straight into my kitchen, opened her little folder, and started writing notes. Clutter on counter. Possible violation. She actually said it out loud, like she was dictating to some invisible secretary. I wanted to laugh, but anger pushed the humor away. Then she turned her eyes toward the hallway, and that's when I stepped in front of her. "You've gone far enough," I said. "This is my house. You're not welcome here." Her lips curled into that smug smile again, the one that made every neighbor hate her but never speak up. "You don't get to decide that," she hissed. "The HOA rules are clear. I have authority to inspect properties if needed." Authority. That word, she threw it around like it was magic, like it gave her the right to stomp over anyone she pleased. I tilted my head, studying her, her hands whoa. You're shaking slightly. Her voice was strong, but her eyes flickered, and I realized she wasn't confident. She was desperate. Desperate to remind herself she was powerful, desperate to show she still controlled the street, desperate to prove that nobody could stand against her. I didn't move aside. I didn't yell. I just smiled, because I knew something she didn't know. I had already dialed the police. She thought she was untouchable, but the flashing red and blue lights were already on their way. Still, I wanted her to dig herself deeper, so I stepped back and let her wander further into my house. She inspected my walls. She touched the frames of my family photos. She tapped the edge of my door trim like she was checking for cracks, and every second of it felt like a crime. "You'll be fined for this," she muttered, her pen scribbling fast across the paper. "Your curtains, they're not regulation color, and this," she gestured at my bookshelf, "improper placement, could be a hazard." Improper placement of books. That was the kind of world I lived in, where neighbors spied on neighbors, where every detail could be turned into a violation. She moved closer to the back door, her shoes echoing on the wooden floor. And for a moment I thought, what if she doesn't stop? What if she tries to go upstairs? What if she opens doors she has no right to open? I pictured her storming into my bedroom, taking pictures of my clothes, writing fines for how my bed was made, and my fists clenched at the thought. But then, I heard it. The faint sound outside, the low rumble of an engine, the crackle of a radio. And my heart lifted. The police had arrived. But Karen didn't know yet. She was still rambling about violations, still convincing herself she was authorized. Still living in the little fantasy where she was queen, I stayed silent, letting her walk herself into the trap. She circled back to the living room, her face red with pride. "I'll be filing a full report," she announced. "You'll be fined. And if you don't comply, we'll move to legal action." Her words buzzed in the air, but behind them, I could hear footsteps on my porch. Heavy boots, the kind that carried real authority. Karen didn't notice. She turned to the door, ready to leave, ready to walk away with her little victory. But the moment she opened it, she froze. 2 officers stood outside, their badges glinting in the sun, their faces calm but serious. And behind them, the police car sat at the curb. Red and blue lights flashing against the perfect suburban houses. Karen's voice caught in her throat. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The same woman who had screamed at me moments before. The same woman who shoved her way into my home. The same woman who claimed she was authorized. Now looked like a child caught stealing candy. The taller officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, we've had a call about trespassing." Karen blinked fast. Her face twitching, she shook her head violently. No, you don't understand. I'm with the HOA. I'm authorized to be here." The officer's eyebrows lifted slightly, but his voice stayed steady. "This is private property. You cannot enter without permission." Her voice cracked. But the rules say." And that's when the shorter officer spoke up. The rules of a neighborhood association do not override the law. Karen's whole body stiffened. Her face turned pale. She clutched her clipboard like it was a shield, but the shield was useless now. She looked back at me, her eyes wide, her lips trembling. The same woman who mocked me every week with fines and letters now stood powerless in my doorway, and I will never forget the sound she made next. It wasn't anger. It wasn't authority. It was fear. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Please, don't press charges." The officer's tone didn't change. "That depends on the homeowner." Every second stretched like an hour. I stared at her. This woman who tormented the whole neighborhood. This woman who thought she could control everything. Now begging me silently with her eyes. And in that silence, a strange thought hit me. If I pressed charges, she'd finally face real punishment. But if I let her go, she'd know I held her fate in my hands. And maybe, just maybe, that would break her even more. I didn't answer right away. I let the tension build. I let her sweat under the flashing lights. And then, I spoke. I looked into her eyes. And for the first time, I didn't see power. I didn't see authority. I didn't see the HOA president everyone feared. I saw fear itself. Her hands trembled around that clipboard, her knuckles white, her breathing sharp, almost desperate. The officer turned his head toward me. "Sir, do you want to press charges?" The words hung in the air. Heavy. It felt like the whole street had gone silent. Like every neighbor was holding their breath behind their blinds. I glanced over the officer's shoulder, and sure enough, I saw them. Faces in windows, curtains twitching, people who never dared to defy her. Now, watching to see what I would do, Karen's lips quivered. Her voice came out in a cracked whisper. "Please, I didn't mean. I was only doing my duty." Her duty. That was the excuse she always used. Harassing neighbors was her duty. Writing fines was her duty. Invading homes, apparently, was her duty too. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to tell her duty had nothing to do with it. This wasn't about rules. It never was. This was about her obsession with control. The taller officer's eyes never left me. "It's your call, sir." I thought about the letters, the endless fines, the humiliating notes she taped to my door, the way she turned the neighborhood into a prison of rules. And now, finally, she stood trapped in her own cage. I opened my mouth to speak. But before I could, she dropped her clipboard. The sound echoed on my porch, a sharp smack against the wood. She flinched, like even the noise was turning against he. And then she whispered again, louder this time. "Don't do this to me, please." For a moment, I almost felt pity, almost, because behind her begging eyes, I still saw it. That tiny spark of arrogance, that belief that she was still untouchable. She didn't regret trespassing, she regretted being caught. I took a slow breath, and then I shook my head. "Officers," I said quietly, "she's not authorized to be here." She never was. Karen's face collapsed, like the last piece of her armor had been ripped away. The shorter officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, you're coming with us." Her voice shot up again. "No, you can't. I'm the HOA president. I have rights." The officer's tone was cold. "You have the right to remain silent." Her face turned red, her body stiffened, and as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, the neighborhood finally saw it. The woman who ruled over us wasn't untouchable after all. They guided her down the porch steps, her heels scraping against the wood, and when she reached the street, something remarkable happened. The neighbors stepped out. First it was Mrs. Wilson, the quiet old lady from across the street. Then it was the Johnsons, who always paid their fines without question. Then it was the single mom who lived 2 doors down, the one Karen tormented about her yard toys. One by one, they came outside, and they watched. No smiles, no laughter, just a heavy silence. Karen tried to speak again. "This isn't fair. You all know me. You all know I'm protecting the community." But nobody answered. Not a single word. Her authority had melted in front of us all. Her crown was gone. The officers guided her into the car. The door shut. The sirens lit the sky red and blue. And the queen of the cul-de-sac was gone. I stood in my doorway, my heart pounding. Not from fear, but from something else. Relief. For the first time in years, I felt free. The neighbors slowly turned toward me. Some nodded. Some whispered thanks. And I realized, this wasn't just my victory. It was theirs too. Because one by one, they had suffered under her. The ridiculous fines, the threats of legal action, the humiliation in front of the board, and now they had seen her crumble. But I also knew something else. The HOA wasn't gone. The board still existed. And without their president, they would be scrambling for control. Would they choose someone better? Or would they find another Karen to crown the next morning? I found out. A letter slipped under my door. No fines this time, just a notice. Emergency HOA meeting scheduled. Attendance mandatory. I laughed when I read it. Mandatory. After what just happened, still clinging to power, still pretending they had control. But I went anyway, because I wanted to see their faces. I wanted to see what they would say now that their leader was in handcuffs. The room was small. The community hall, folding chairs lined up in neat rows, neighbors packed in, whispering, and at the front sat the remaining board members, 3 of them, nervous, shifting in their seats, avoiding eye contact. Finally, one of them spoke. "We regret the events that occurred yesterday." His voice shook. "And we assure you, the HOA does not support unlawful entry into private property." The room buzzed with quiet laughter. Nobody believed them. We had all seen them nod along to Karen's tyranny. We had all seen them sign off on her fines, but then another board member cleared her throat. "Until a new president is chosen, we will temporarily suspend enforcement of fines." And that's when the room erupted. Applause. Actual applause in a meeting that was usually nothing but tension. I sat back, watching for once. The power was in the people's hands, and for once, the board knew it. When the meeting ended, neighbors gathered around me. Some clapped me on the shoulder, some whispered thank you, and for the first time in years, I felt like we were a community again, not prisoners of rules, but neighbors of a street finally free from fear. But deep down, I couldn't shake one thought. Karen wasn't gone forever. She was humiliated. She was broken. But women like her don't just disappear. They wait. They plot. They come back when you least expect it. And late that night, as I stood on my porch with another cup of coffee, I swore I saw her car at the end of the street, parked under the shadows, engine idling, lights off. Maybe it was my imagination, maybe not. But one thing is certain. The story wasn't over that night. I couldn't sleep. I kept staring out the window. The hum of the streetlights, the faint rustle of trees, and there it was again. A car idling at the end of the cul-de-sac. Dark, windows tinted, engine low and steady like a beast breathing in the shadows. I leaned closer to the glass, but the moment I did, the car pulled away. No headlights, just silence swallowing the street again. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was paranoid, but the way my stomach twisted told me otherwise. The next morning, things seemed normal. Children rode bikes. Neighbors watered lawns. The world looked calm again, but my mailbox told a different story. Inside was a plain white envelope, no stamp, no return address, just my name scrawled across the front in messy handwriting. I opened it slowly, and when I read the words, my hands went cold. "You think you've won, but this isn't over." No signature, no clue, but I didn't need one. I knew exactly who wrote it. Karen, even after being arrested, she was still playing her game, still trying to hold power over me, still trying to plant fear in my mind. I crumpled the note. But the words burned into me, and as the day went on, more things began to happen. My trash can was tipped over. Even though I knew I had locked it tight, my sprinklers turned on in the middle of the night, soaking my yard into a muddy mess. And then, the strangest thing, a picture taped to my door, a picture of my own house, taken from Acro. It's the street. No message, no explanation, just the image of my home, staring back at me, that night. I sat in the dark living room, no TV, no lights, just waiting. Every car that passed, every shadow that moved, my eyes followed, and then I heard it, a faint tap, not at the door, not at the window, but at the back gate. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The grass was damp under my feet. The air smelled sharp, like rain was coming. I reached the gate and swung the beam of light across it. Nothing, just the empty street behind my fence. But when I lowered the light, I saw it. A fresh scratch mark across the wood, like someone dragged something sharp against it. Deliberate, slow, mocking. I locked the gate and stepped back inside, but sleep was impossible after that. The following day, whispers spread across the neighborhood. Some said Karen was seen walking near the park. Others said she was spotted at the grocery store. One neighbor swore he saw her talking to a man in a black SUV. Nobody knew for sure, but everyone felt it. Her shadow still haunted us. The HOA board tried to act strong. They held another meeting, talked about rebuilding trust and moving forward. But even as they spoke, their voices cracked. They were afraid too, because if she came back, she'd come for them as well. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I installed cameras around my property, one at the front door, one at the gate, 2 covering the yard. Every night I checked the footage. Every night I waited for her face to appear. Days passed, then weeks, and just when I thought maybe it was all in my head, the cameras caught something. At 2:17 a.m., the motion sensor went off. A figure walked past the edge of my lawn, not close enough to trigger the spotlight, but close enough for me to see the outline. A woman, short hair, moving slow, like she wanted me to know she was there. And then, the creepiest part, she stopped, turned toward the camera, and raised her hand, not waving, not pointing, just pressing one finger against her lips, as if to say, shh. The next morning, I watched the footage 10 times. It was her. It had to be. The same stance, the same shape, the same aura of arrogance and menace. I took the footage to the police, but they shrugged. Without a clear face, we can't do much. They told me to keep recording, keep reporting, but inside I knew. Karen was winning again. Not with fines, not with rules, but with fear. The neighbors noticed it too. We became prisoners in our own homes. Curtains stayed shut, lights flicked on at odd hours, and every creak of the street became suspicious. The irony hit me like a punch. For years she used the HOA rules to control us. Now she didn't need rules at all. Her presence alone was enough, but I wasn't about to let her win, so I made a decision. If the board wouldn't stop her, if the police wouldn't stop her, then I would expose her myself. I started collecting evidence, every note, every picture, every scratch on my property. I even interviewed neighbors quietly, asking if they had strange encounters too. And slowly, a pattern appeared. She wasn't just targeting me. She was targeting anyone who spoke up after her arrest, anyone who dared to clap at the meeting, anyone who smiled when the fines were suspended. It was revenge, pure and simple. And yet, part of me wondered, how far would she go? Would she just leave notes and scratch fences? Or would she push further? Would she break into someone's home again? Would she cross the line from intimidation to something darker? The neighborhood felt different now, quieter, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl, the kind of silence that means something is hiding in the shadows. Every night, I checked my cameras. Every night, I saw movement that didn't beep. Elong, a figure across the street, a shadow slipping past a fence. Sometimes the camera caught nothing, but the audio picked up faint footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. Karen was playing a game, and I was her favorite target. The neighbors began whispering more openly now. Mr. Johnson said his car tires were slashed. The single mom down the street found her mailbox ripped out of the ground. Mrs. Wilson, the sweet old woman who baked pies for everyone, woke up to find her garden destroyed, and every one of them swore. They saw someone running away into the night. We all knew who it was, but proving it was another story. The police grew tired of the calls. They told us it was neighborhood kids. They said without proof, nothing could be done. But we knew better. This wasn't kids. This was calculated. This was personal. One night, I decided to stay awake. No coffee, no TV. Just me sitting in the dark with my eyes on the windows. The clock ticked past midnight. Then 1, then 2. At 2:33 a.m., the sound came again, the faint creak of the back gate. This time, I didn't grab a flashlight, I didn't step outside, I just waited. The gate opened, and through the thin curtain, I saw her. Karen, her silhouette clear in the moonlight, short hair, stiff shoulders. Moving like she was on a mission, she crept across my yard, her head turning left and right, checking if anyone was watching. Then she bent down near my porch, and that's when I realized. She was carrying something, a can of spray paint. She shook it once, the rattling ball inside echoing in the still night. Then she pressed down, red paint hissed across my wall, big, ugly letters, dripping down the siding. I couldn't read the whole word yet, but I knew what it was meant to say. Traitor. She wasn't just trying to scare me, she was trying to mark me. I grabbed my phone and hit record, through the glass. I captured her, the queen of the cul-de-sac, now reduced to sneaking around with a spray can. Her arrogance looked different in the dark. It wasn't confidence anymore, it was desperation. When she finished, she stepped back, admiring her work. Then she laughed, a low, bitter laugh that sent chills down my spine. She turned and froze. The red glow of a recording light blinked on my camera. She saw it. She knew she had been caught, for a second. She didn't move, her body stiff, her face pale. Then she bolted, through the yard, out the gate, disappearing into the night. The next morning, the word was clear, big and red across my wall: traitor. The neighbors gathered, staring. Some shook their heads. Some whispered. Nobody needed to ask who did it. We all knew. And now, I had proof. I went straight to the police station. I showed them the video. Her face was blurry, but the shape was undeniable. The paint can, the stance, the laugh. It was her. The officer sighed. Looks like vandalism to me. He promised they'd look into it, but his tone told me the truth. They didn't want to touch this mess, so I made another decision. If the police wouldn't stop her, then the neighborhood would. We called a meeting, not an HOA meeting, not official, just us, the people who lived here. We gathered in Mrs. Wilson's garage, folding chairs again, but this time, no board, no rules, no fines, just neighbors tired of living in fear. Everyone had a story, everyone had been targeted, and everyone had one question: how do we stop her? Some wanted cameras everywhere, some wanted to file a lawsuit, but one neighbor, the single mom, said something that stuck with me. People like her, they destroy themselves. We just have to let her? Her words stayed in my head long after the meeting ended, because maybe she was right. Maybe Karen was digging her own grave with every move she made. But my wall was still painted, my name still marked as traitor. And I wasn't about to wait forever, so I set a trap. I left my porch light off, I left the gate unlocked, and I left a small box on my steps, wrapped like a package. Inside was nothing but paper. But the box had a GPS tracker taped inside. If she came back, if she tried to steal it, I'd know where she went that night. I waited again. 2 a.m, silence, then footsteps. The figure appeared. She moved faster this time, straight to the porch. Her hands grabbed the box, and she ran. I waited until the GPS pinged. She didn't go far, just down the road, to a small house near the corner, one I had never paid attention to before. But now, it was glowing in my mind like a target. The next day, I walked past that house, curtains drawn, mailbox overflowing with letters, and on the porch, the same box I had planted, empty now, abandoned like she didn't care. I realized something then. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was daring me. She wanted me to know she was still here, still in the neighborhood, still watching. And that made me wonder, if she was bold enough to paint my walls, bold enough to steal from my porch, bold enough to come back after everything, what would she do next? Because people like Karen don't stop. They escalate. They push further and further until something finally snaps. And deep down, I knew the snap was coming soon. The package trap proved what I already knew. Karen was still here, still hiding in plain sight, still daring me to stop her. But proof wasn't enough, because proof means nothing when the system doesn't care. The police shrugged. The board stayed silent. And the neighbors? They wanted peace, not war. But Karen wanted war. The week after the box incident, things escalated fast. My car windshield cracked one morning, a rock thrown clean through it. No fingerprints, no witnesses. The Johnsons woke up to their entire driveway covered in eggs, and Mrs. Wilson, the sweetest soul in the neighborhood, found her front door painted with the word liar, Karen wasn't subtle anymore. She was punishing anyone who stood against her. I tried to keep calm. I tried to remind myself that bullies only win if you let them. But one night, she crossed the line. It was 3 a.m. when I heard the sound. Not outside, not at the gate. Inside, a floorboard creaked. I froze in bed. Heart hammering. The sound came again, soft, slow. Deliberate steps in the hallway. I grabbed the bat I kept by the dresser. My throat dry, every nerve in my body screaming. I opened the bedroom door, and the hallway stretched before me like a tunnel of shadows. Another creak. This time closer. I raised the bat and whispered into the dark. "Who's there?" No answer. Just silence. Then a faint laugh. A laugh I knew too well. "Karen." I flicked the hallway light. The bulb buzzed, flickered, and went out. Darkness swallowed me whole. The laugh came again, softer this time, almost playful. I tightened my grip on the bat and stepped forward, my bare feet cold on the floorboards, every step matched by the echo of her breath in the dark. Then, the front door slammed shut. I sprinted forward. By the time I reached the living room, it was empty. The door hung open, the night air spilling inside, and on the coffee table, something waited, a single envelope, inside. One word scribbled in red marker. Soon. That night, I didn't sleep at all. By morning, the whole neighborhood knew. I didn't even have to tell them, because she made sure of it. Half the houses on the street had letters taped to their doors, each one with the same word, soon. It was her way of reminding us. She wasn't just after me, she was after all of us. The neighbors gathered in my driveway, fear on every face. Some wanted to leave town, some wanted to call the news. But one man, Mr. Johnson, clenched his fists and said what we were all thinking. This ends now. We made a plan, not with the police, not with the board, just us. The neighbors who were tired of living undone to her shadow. That night, we set watches. Every house kept lights on. Every yard had someone awake, phones ready, cameras ready. We weren't going to let her slip through the dark again. At 1:46 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Wilson. Movement near the park. I grabbed my jacket and ran outside. Several neighbors followed. We moved together, silent but strong. And when we reached the park, we saw her. Karen, standing under the old oak tree, her short hair wild in the wind, her hands gripping another spray can, the trunk already painted with one word: rules. She turned when she saw us, her eyes wide at first, then narrow, filled with that familiar arrogance. "You think you've beaten me?" she hissed. "But you're nothing without me. This neighborhood falls apart without rules." Nobody spoke. We just stood there, flashlights aimed at her, cameras recording. And for the first time, I saw fear flicker across her face again. Because this time, she wasn't facing me alone. She was facing everyone. Mr. Johnson stepped forward. "Karen, it's over. You're done." She shook her head violently. No, I built this place. I kept it perfect. Without me, you're just chaos. You need me." Her voice cracked. Her body trembled. The can slipped from her hand and rolled across the grass. For a long moment, none of us moved. The night held its breath. Then sirens cut through the silence. This time, it wasn't me who called. It was Mrs. Wilson. The police pulled up fast, their lights flashing red across Karen's pale face. She tried to run, but she didn't make it far. The officers grabbed her, pinned her arms, and for the second time, I watched her be dragged away. But something was different this time. She wasn't begging, she wasn't whispering, she was laughing, a cold, broken laugh that made my stomach twist. "You think this stops me?" she shouted. "You think this is over, but it's only the beginning." Her voice echoed across the park as the car door slammed, and then she was gone. Again. The neighbors exhaled, some hugged, some cried, but I stood still. Her words stuck in my head, because I knew. Karen wasn't just a person anymore. She was a storm, and storms always come back. Later that night, as I replayed everything in my mind, I asked myself the question I didn't want to face: if she returned again. Louder, angrier, more dangerous. How far would I go to stop her? After that night in the park, Everyone thought it was over. Karen had been arrested again. The police drove her away under the flashing red lights, and the neighborhood, for the first time in years, felt free. But I didn't feel free. Not really. Her laugh still rang in my ears. Her words still clawed at my mind. This is only the beginning. I wanted to believe she was bluffing. I wanted to believe the system would finally hold her accountable. But deep down, I knew better. The days that followed were strangely calm. No fines, no notes, no vandalism. The lawns grew green again. Children played in the street, and neighbors started smiling at each other instead of hiding behind curtains. The HOA board even dissolved. They held one final meeting, small and awkward. The members admitted they couldn't rebuild trust. They stepped down. No elections, no replacements, just silence. For the first time, the board no longer existed. It felt like victory, but it also felt like a void, because when someone like Karen leaves, they don't leave quietly, they leave scars. I tried to enjoy the peace, morning coffee on my porch, evening walks without looking over my shoulder. But every time I passed the corner house, the one where she'd hidden after her first arrest, I felt my chest tighten. The windows were still covered, the mailbox still stuffed with uncollected letters, and sometimes, late at night, I swore I saw a light flicker inside. One evening, I decided to check for myself. I walked past slow, pretending to just stroll, and in the window, behind the thin curtain, I saw it, a shadow, someone standing perfectly still, watching. I froze. And blinked, and the shadow was gone. That night, I barely slept, because I realized something. The police could take her away 100 times, but unless she left town for good, she'd always come back. And maybe, she never even left. A week later, it happened again. Another envelope slipped under my door. No return address, no handwriting this time, just a printed message. Rules never die. My blood ran cold, because I knew exactly what it meant. She was still here, and she still believed she owned us. I gathered the neighbors again. We met in my living room this time, the air heavy with fear and anger. Everyone spoke at once. Some wanted to sell their houses and move. Some wanted to hire security guards. But one voice cut through the noise. It was Mrs. Wilson, her hands trembling, but her voice steady. We can't run forever. If we leave, she wins. If we hide, she wins. The only way this ends is if we take back the neighborhood. Silence filled the room, and then, one by one, we agreed. We made a pact that night. No more fear, no more hiding. If Karen came back, we'd face her together, and soon. She did. It was another late night, the air heavy with summer heat. I was sitting by the window when I heard it again, that familiar creak of the back gate. But this time, I wasn't alone. The neighbors were ready. Lights flicked on across the street, doors opened, figures stepped out silently. Karen walked into my yard, but when she looked up, she froze. Because she wasn't just facing me this time, she was facing the entire block. Flashlights blinded her, voices rose together, some angry, some calm, but all united. Leave. You're done. No more. Her face twisted. She laughed that bitter laugh again. You can't stop me. You'll fall apart without me. You're nothing without rules. But something had changed. Her voice no longer carried power. Her threats no longer made us flinch, because now she was outnumbered. The police came again. But this time it wasn't me who called. It was every neighbor at once. Phones held high, cameras recording. Karen didn't fight this time. She didn't run. She just stared at us, her eyes burning with rage. Or maybe fear. It was hard to tell. When the officers pulled her away, she shouted one last thing. You'll regret this. Without me, this neighborhood will rot. But as the car drove off, I looked around, at the neighbors standing together, at the lights shining on every porch, at the smiles breaking through the fear, and I realized she was wrong, because for the first time, we weren't a group of people ruled by an HOA. We were a community. The weeks after were different. We cut our own grass. In our own way, we painted our houses the colors we liked. We shared food, stories, laughter. And when the board tried to send letters about reforming, we ignored them. We didn't need rules anymore. We needed each other. Karen's name became a ghost. whispered sometimes, but fading more each day. Her shadow lingered, but it no longer owned us, and the neighborhood, finally, began to heal. Still, some nights I wonder, what if she comes back again? What if she finds another way in? What if she decides she'd rather burn the place down than let it live without her? I sip my coffee, stare at the street, and tell myself it's over. But in the quiet of the night, I'm not so sure, because people like Karen, they don't just vanish. They wait, they plot, they watch, and sometimes, when the wind rattles the gate, I swear I hear her laugh. And now I'll ask you, if someone like Karen haunted your neighborhood, would you forgive and try to move on? Or would you fight until you knew she was gone forever?